camera, if you can say and spell your name.
Okay. Todd Hollenshead, TODDHOLLENSHEAD.
And what company you work for, and what's your role?
I work for id Software, and I'm the CEO.
And tell us a little bit about the origin of id Software.
id Software started, its origins are from Softdisk, which was a small magazine publishing company in Shreveport, Louisiana, back in 1990, basically a games division that created a game to be published on a cover disc for 5.25-inch cover disc for the magazine on a monthly basis. And John Carmack, John Romero, Tom Hall, Jason Blahowiak, and Adrian Carmack all met through working in the games division at Softdisk. Sort of in their spare time, in addition to doing stuff for the magazine, they created Commander Keen, which then was sort of released to public acclaim, and the guys decided to leave Softdisk after that and sort of make their living on their own making games. Went up to Wisconsin to start the development of Wolfenstein at the end of 1991 and in 1992, and I guess the rest is sort of history. Wolfenstein, obviously, they were very, was highly anticipated at the time. It developed a relationship with Apogee Software at the time, who was the publisher for Wolfenstein, which really established the shareware marketing concept as a legitimate means of game distribution back in the early 90s. And on the heels of Wolfenstein's success, it developed and published Doom on its own, and everybody else. I think that's where the story sort of becomes common knowledge in the game industry that Doom broke all the records. The retail launch of Doom 2 is the fastest selling game, I think, still to this day in retail software history, and of course has been followed up with Quake, Quake 2, and now Quake 3 Arena.
When you got into gaming, did you ever have any idea that your games would reach the kind of popularity that they have? And if you haven't, was there a moment when you were like, oh my God, what is going on? These games are selling so well.
Well, the fortunate thing for me was when I joined id Software in 1996, the company was already established. So Doom and Doom 2 were already successful. Quake, although it hadn't been released retail in the full version in retail at that point, it was obviously going to be a top-selling title. So my first introduction with id Software was as a gamer playing Wolfenstein and loving it, playing it until I had to lay down on the bed from motion sickness. So what we've been able to do since I've joined the company I really think we've exceeded our own expectations. Quake 2 was a great selling game. It continues to be a great selling game, and we're getting close to 1.5 million units worldwide just on the PC platform, and it's obviously being sold on PlayStation and Nintendo 64 as well. Quake 3 Arena, we've been very pleased with the reception that game has gotten, especially given the fact that it's a hardware-only game. You have to have a hardware accelerator to be able to play the game. There's not a software render, and we're still north of 400,000 units sold through since the game's launched in December of 1999. So we've been able to impress ourselves every time we've released a new game, and hopefully we can continue to do so.
What's the appeal? Why do people like first-person shooters?
People like first-person shooters because the nature of the game is that it actually involves the player in what's going on the screen. A third-person game, you can do some very interesting things, but still you're always controlling your little avatar, your little guy on the screen. You're not actually the player that's in command. In no other game do you get, like, people when they're playing, moving their head left and right, trying to literally dodge projectiles and rockets with body movement within a chair. And that's the experience of the person actually being in the world and viewing the world through the computer monitor is something that you really can't get a similar experience to except for in first person.
War inspector and okay. Let's see. Quake 3. Are we going to see a Quake 4? Is Quake 3 the end of the Quake series?
I don't know that Quake 3 is going to be the end of the Quake series. The next game that we're going to be working on won't be Quake 4. We're still in the process of designing the game, etc. So we're not really ready to talk about specifically what it's going to be, but it will be something different than what we did with Quake 3. We really think that we've reached the pinnacle with respect to deathmatch game design. Although what we do next will probably be a first-person action game.
And do you know the history of the deathmatch, or when the idea to have a deathmatch? Like, can you talk a little bit about the history of that mode of play or that style of play?
Well, deathmatch originated with Doom in 1993, and the idea was, hey, we have this, we can actually have people can play with each other and against each other over a modem. And that was obviously one of the things that sort of had extended the life of Doom in terms of replayability on users' hard drives. And with Doom 2, it started as something that's like, okay, well, it's just one-on-one versus a modem. Hey, well, we can have 4 people playing over a LAN. And then, John Carmack had the idea of, well, let's extend it beyond LANs and modem play to make an internet play component for Quake and expand it from 4 players to 8 and 16 players. And then with sort of the growth of the internet, there just this tremendous community generated to support the multiplayer experience, use amateur developers creating modifications to the game, etc., really taking the game as far as, limited only by their own imagination in terms of what they could do, for Quake. For Doom it was like Phil Barney, but for Quake they were able to make like a Quake Soccer and a Quake Chess and a Quake Rally where it was like a racing car game, in addition to just a number of different variations on deathmatch and team-type deathmatch.
And speaking about community and the community surrounding Quake, releasing the level editor, what impact has that had on developing a community and the first-person shooter genre in general?
Well, it has always been an innovator with respect to opening game content up to the users and the players of the games. And it sort of almost started by accident with people being able to sort of hack in and play with Wolfenstein. And it's come to this point to be, a conscious design decision that we go in and we go, okay, we want to make sure that the game we make is extendable and usable and modifiable by amateur developers out there. And to this point, we actually release all the internal professional development tools that we make for our own games out to the user community and include with those really a development kit in terms of an instruction manual, a how-to, etc. Release all the tools that allow people to build, create, design their own levels, and release all the game source code of the games, which allows them better access to going in and making changes within the game. And it's something that we put a lot of effort into because we really want to make it as easy as possible to allow the user community to be able to make excellent user-created levels.
Some people might say that that's a bad business practice because you're giving away all your secrets to everybody. People can copy your game, see your team. How do you feel about that? Well,
I think there's a philosophical battle sort of between people who believe in closed content games and open content games. And our philosophy has always been to keep the content open, and that keeps the game replayable and extendable and modifiable. And then not only are you appealing to people who just want to play the game as sort of it fits within the box that you buy off the shelf, but also people are sort of computer game hobbyists, which is a significant portion of the hardcore gamers market, actually want to go out and be able to, build their own games or change games based on the games that the game developers create. And that sort of goes back to the genesis of, even games on the Apple II and on the PC about, you sort of have this hacker community that goes out and makes games, and it's sort of, a toy of people that had powerful machines, etc. But I think that it can be something that can take away from some games, but we've always been able to make sure that it's something that actually is a benefit to not only the people who buy the games, but to the community as well. And so we actually extend the life of the games and extend the playability. And the people who buy our games, I think, get the most entertainment value for their dollar, because you buy a game that you may play for years and years because there's always something new coming out that's created. Additions to which are limited only by end users' imagination.
On a concept or a level, do you design differently? What's the differences on a concept level between designing a game that you're going to put the source code out there on the internet for people and then like a closed content game?
Well, from a closed content game, you really can sort of define your universe to say, okay, well, we're going to do everything, and if you need a special case for something, then you can sort of create the game and say, okay, well, we'll have special case programming for this one area, and then it doesn't break because you don't have to worry about somebody going in and changing it later to break sort of the special case programming you have in. If it's an open content game, you basically have to try to envision what people will potentially do with the tools that you're making available to them. So that to some extent becomes a limitation on what you can do, and it certainly limits the amount to which you can special case certain problematic areas in game design for you. I think one thing it does from a programmer standpoint is it leads to a more elegantly programmed game is that there's not a lot of just sort of special case code that's built on top of one of the things that then becomes subject to break if some sort of odd variable is introduced to it. And I think that's one of the beauties of John Carmack coding engines is that one of his fortes is he's able to come up with an elegant, universally sort of applicable solution to certain problems, and then you can introduce all sorts of different variables and it doesn't fundamentally break down the rendering system that he creates.
And talk a little bit about the mission pack for Quake 3. What new things will it add to the game? How will it enhance the game?
The mission pack for Quake 3 is team focused, and the design around the mission pack is to augment all the team play elements that people are familiar with, plus add new ones. With Quake 3 Arena, the original game, we basically were focusing on the deathmatch experience with Team Deathmatch and CTF sort of added as bonus sort of game modes. But with the team mission pack, the entire focus of the mission pack is primarily on team play. So in addition to Capture the Flag, which everybody's played, is that we have 3 new team play game variants, which are one flag, Capture the Flag, which there's a flag in the center, which your team has to get it and go touch the opposing team's flag with. There's a game type we call Harvester, which is when you frag an enemy teammate, enemy team player, a skull spawns out from a sort of a spawn fountain in the middle of the map, and you collect the skulls and then go and touch their base with it to score points. And the third type is a game called Overload, which you have an obelisk in each of the team's bases, which you want to defend at the same time while attacking the enemy team's obelisk and inflicting damage on that. It has a certain amount of hit points, which once you inflict damage to destroy it, then you get a point for your team, and then it respawns, and so you start the cycle over again. We've additional things we've done to improve the team play experience is that we've changed the display for the players, and there's better communication between players where you can actually, by accessing a hotkey, tab through each of the players on your team and then give them commands or respond to them by just literally a couple of mouse clicks. It's easy entry and exit while you're actually playing through the game. You can also move all elements, whether it's health, ammo, armor, location, etc., all around the screen by literally just a click and drag approach to the icons. The team concept is we have 2 new models for each team, and these teams, while the models are consistent, it's basically the approach that teams take with uniforms. So your model is like your uniform, but the heads are interchangeable. So while you keep basically a uniform team identity, everybody can be an individual because you can put a different head on all of the models and still have different personalities, etc. And of course, that will be extendable and modifiable by the user community as well. So they'll be able to design, in addition to the models and gate heads for each model that we're putting into the game, we'll be able to put whichever ones that they want to. We have new team-specific power-ups in each of the game types. They range from one that increases your rate of movement and fire to one that regenerates health and ammo. These are specific to each team so that players on a team can sort of determine what role they want to play, because we find that some people want to play defense, some people want to be on the offensive side, so they can pick a power up for their team and then actually go in and sort of play that role within the game. and these power-ups are persistent for each team, whereas in the past, in some of the versions of Quake 2 CTF and in original Quake CTF, one team would get like all 4 power-ups and then sort of dominate the map, and then the other team really had no hope. Whereas this one is a player picks up a power-up, they keep it until they're fragged or until they die, and then if they do, the other team can't get it, it just respawns in the team's face, and then another team, they can pick it up or they can go back and pick it up as well. All the game types, all the elements that we put into it is basically refining and taking sort of the team play experience to the next level.
Quake 3 being a deathmatch central game is very different than Quake 2 being more of a campaign-oriented game. How was the Q&A process and the actual play testing process different for those 2 games?
Well, for Quake 2, since it was a mission-based, story-driven game, is that there was, although the levels weren't necessarily linear, there was a progression that you went throughout the game that you had to make sure that, okay, well, if you did something in one level, it didn't break something that you're going to do in the future, in those sorts of game-type problems you could potentially have that we didn't really have to worry about with Quake 3. But with Quake 3 Arena, the issues were on making sure that because we knew that the levels were going to really be played heavily in deathmatch, which is players running all over the level, and the frame rate being a very important factor, and being able to jump and rocket jump all over the different levels, is we wanted to make sure that the levels were pure, that there weren't slowdowns, performance hits, etc. So, given the pace of the game, it was very important for us to maintain a high level of average frame rates wherever you were in the levels, and so that required quite a bit of play testing to make sure that once you got actually introduced players into the level with bots and combinations, etc., that you were able to maintain the fast, frenetic game pace that I think has been the key to the success and the popularity of deathmatch.
Where does the word frag come from?
I think that just comes from just Marine terminology, actually. It was borrowed from the Army.
And, I'm sorry, we've got to send in the shine for this again. My apologies.
I appreciate it. Believe me, anything that helps.
Okay, one of the most distinctive things about Quake 3 is that voice at the end. It goes 3, frags, Lex. Where did that come from? Who came up with that idea? When did you put it in the game? Because, I hear that in my dreams.
The Quake 3 announcer is what we call it. That actually originated sort of as, well, we need something so that we know when it's supposed to be into the game. And so Christian Anko, who's one of the level designers, went in and recorded his voice, and then took different samples, like had, John Carmack, here, say this in the microphone. What's this for? And we'll tell you later. And so that's basically the genesis of it. It was really just sort of to be a placeholder, and then it ended up being something that everybody ended up liking, and so we found different uses for it. So when you come close to a power up like the quad damage, what have you, and somebody else grabs it right in front of you, you get the denied and and you have taken the lead and those sorts of things. So it was something that we really wanted to add, to sort of get the feeling that there was some sort of, power that was watching from the outside, sort of in the loose bounds of the storyline for Quake 3. Is it okay, you sort of get this voice in your head that tells you what's going on within the game.
And my personal nemesis in the game is the orb. I won't play a deathmatch without the orb in it. Explain what the orb is for the audience, and tell how you came up with that, such a weird thing.
Well, orb is the idea of Paul Steed. He actually came up with the idea, and he just wanted to do something that was different from a modeling standpoint, because he had some new freedom to do some different things with the new animation system that we had from Quake 3 versus Quake 2. And so we saw this, and he sort of put it in, and everybody liked it, and we said, well, how does this fit in with the gameplay? And we was like, here's a good idea, is that the orb was sort of, at one point, it was like a monitor for the Vadrigar, who are like the super powerful beings. They're like drawing you into the Quake 3 Arena universe. And this was, at one point, was just basically the monitoring tool of Vadrigar to go around and monitor what was happening in their little, their arenas that were constructed for their entertainment. And we liked it so much, and it was such a unique model, we decided, hey, well, you should be able to play with this guy in the game, and we were able to do some really neat things, from like the hands doing the idle animations of the fingers tapping on the ground, to the sound effects, the different weapon mount, and then the eyeball looking around, etc. So it ended up being something that we thought, well, hey, we're really shooting for something that's over the top here. Here's a character that's definitely over the top that we think fits in well with the universe and that people will have fun to play.
Quake 3 is kind of a violent game, but conflict has always been a part of gaming, from checkers and chess on up. Do you find that conflict is an inherent part of games, or do you feel that it's not, but that there have to be certain games in the marketplace that satisfy that need? Do you have any take on it?
Conflict in gaming and violence in gaming is something that's sort of become a recent topic of controversy, but our attitude about it is that we basically make games that we like to play, and there's certainly a world of different type of games that all sorts of game developers make, and the thing about it is that given the breadth of entertainment content that people want, is I think that we make a game that we make a game type that a lot of people like to play, that we like to play, that's entertaining, and it's really all in good fun. So what's going on within the construct of the game environment is really just, a different form of entertainment. And I don't think that that it's correct to say, okay, well, this sort of entertainment is correct or proper, and this sort of entertainment is incorrect or improper, because it's really all just fun. I mean, there were violence in Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, and nobody said, oh, well, this is an evil cartoon, let's not show it on television, because it was just viewed as something that was entertaining for kids and people to watch.
What do you think has been the most significant development, both on the technological side and in the design side, in gaming in the past 10 to 20 years?
Well, the two things I think that you see the convergence on in terms of important, really watershed events for game technology is the internet playing a role in bringing gamers together from across, wide geographical different locations, and then also hardware acceleration, because the amount of realism and interactivity that you can put into games today is unparalleled based on, compared to what it's been in the past. And those are what you're seeing, really the combination of those two, especially for PC gaming, the combination of those two factors really is what everybody is designing games around today. Because everybody wants to be able to, if they're not playing against someone online, they'd like to be able to play with them online. And if they're not taking advantage of the internet and communications infrastructure and ability of gamers to communicate with one another and play with one another over networks, is that they're wanting to definitely make a richer and deeper single-player experience, which, now you can basically do in real time what what you required a $20,000 SGI workstation literally within the past 5 years. And that has enabled game designers to make just quantum leaps in terms of experience for game players.
And my last question, where do you see gaming going in the future, and what role will both first-person shooters and id Software play in that?
Well, I think that gaming's role in the future is sort of the interactive entertainment medium. Movies and TV and the recording industry are definitely doing an excellent job with passive entertainment, but I think that a lot of people see games and play games and see it as something more. It's something more involving. You actually get to play a role in the development and the carrying out of the story. And that's what draws that's what's drawing more and more people into gaming, because it's something that they can do that's entertainment, but it's not passive entertainment. They get to participate in it. And its role in the game development community, I think, as a leader in the game development community, I think is sort of two different purposes or two different functions. One of which is, from a technology standpoint, we continue to push the envelope of what you can do from a 3D first-person perspective, and I think that we'll continue to do that in the future. That's John Carmack, I think, is unparalleled in terms of his programming ability, 3D graphics programmer. He's the best in the world, and as long as he's an asset of the company, then I think the company will continue to lead and innovate in that space, and push the technological envelope forward. And then secondly, I think that what companies and id Software in particular need to do is focus on refining the depth of experience that players get when they play games. I think we've been able to really do that in the past, but the tools that we have coming forward in terms of more and more powerful machines, from the PC to all the various consoles that are either out already, such as the Dreamcast, or coming, such as PlayStation 2, Xbox, Nintendo Dolphin, etc., are really going to allow developers to just provide a much more rich environment for players to play in. And I think it's all about people want to, they want to go to their playground. They want to go to their virtual playground. And so the task of game developers is to build a playground where they can, they can have different experiences in, and they can play the type of games that they want to play. And that's what we're about, is coming as close as possible as we can to a virtual playground.
Okay, I do have one more question, actually.
Sure.
It just occurred to me. We're just seeing a moment now in gaming history where I can play someone on the PC on my console. Like, I can have a Dreamcast, call up, and play you on your PC. Quake 3 Arena is one of the first games. It is the first game that this is going to happen on. Can you comment on that and talk a little bit about that?
I think it's an important step for the consoles to make, to actually sort of embrace networking technology and multiplayer concept, changing from something that 4 people played in front of a single TV to be able to play remotely across communications infrastructure. And what we've done with Quake 3, with interaction of the PC and the console systems, I think is going to push consoles forward, and that's what we're intending to do in terms of an interactive experience. And the key thing for Quake 3 and on the Dreamcast and being able to play against the PC players is that you actually plug console players who traditionally have sort of been, isolated in their own living room into a community that's already tremendous in size, that exists on the internet. So you don't have to go through the growing pains of, like, well, there's one person out there, but he's lonely, until there's another person actually gets on and plays and has something to talk about. Now you have the opportunity for the console audience and console game players to plug in to a network of players that has been growing and thriving since 1996 and before, with the original release of Quake.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.
I think it's great. Huh?